Grilling pizza. I love every kind of pizza there is, but there's one pizza that I've never had and I've never really made at all, and that's the grilled pizza. But today I've got Kenji López-Alt teaching me everything I need to know on how to make a great grilled pizza, and we're gonna show you all the secrets too. Grilled pizza.
Yeah, grilled pizza. So this was actually my first full-time restaurant job out of college, was grilling pizza. We were trained by one of the chefs at Al Forno in Providence, Rhode Island, which is where they invented grilled pizza. I love grilled pizza because it's extremely simple, right? Like you don't need any kind of special equipment. All you need is a grill, and you get these sort of charred, light results that you get out of like a sort of like a Neapolitan pizza. You know, you get those kind of leopard spots, and you get that really light texture. It's like good for socializing. You know, it's really easy to share. These take about 3 or 4 minutes to make once you start cooking them. And so you have a group of friends around, you pull out one pizza after another, you each take a bite, and you can all just be kind of hanging around the grill. You can do it all in one day, and the actual sort of hands-on part is pretty minimal. So we're gonna do all that, and we're gonna eat some more pizza.
I love it. Let's do it.
All right, so we're just gonna jump into mixing dough? We don't have to do anything.
Let's do it. Let's start with the dough.
All right, so we've got AP flour. This is gonna make enough for 3 pizzas. I think it's 300 grams of flour, yeast, sugar to help with the browning, and is that the right measured amount of salt? Seems like a lot.
How much salt is it?
I'm gonna double check, yeah. 7.5 grams.
7.5? We could try it again. It looks like probably is.
Maybe, yeah.
Where's our scales? Maybe it's extra light and fluffy kosher.
Yeah.
Oh,
Spot on.
7.5.
Wow. All right. Perfect. All right, so we're just gonna very briefly mix our dry ingredients.
Salt's just one of those things. This seems like a lot of salt. Like, nah, it's the perfect amount.
Yep, it's perfect. All right, so now we're gonna add our water and olive oil. So I think this is a 61% hydration dough, so that's 61 times 3, so 183 grams of water, but anywhere between sort of 60 and 65 will do. And honestly, like, you know, this style of pizza is pretty forgiving, so it's like you can easily make it with store-bought dough.
So just a little stiffer just to hold onto the grill?
Unlike, say, like a New York or Neapolitan where you're stretching it out by hand and you really need that dough to be a little bit looser, like this one, we're gonna roll it out with a rolling pin, so actually having a little bit stiffer helps it, and then once it goes on the grill, we don't want it like drooping in and settling, you know? So we're gonna basically just mix it just until it comes together. You could just let the stand mixer go and knead it all, but it works a lot better if you let the flour hydrate a little bit. All right, so now we're basically like in a cohesive ball. So we're just gonna let that, turn that off. Just grab up any sort of excess flour. We basically just have to let this sit for about 15 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah, and in that time, the flour is going to fully hydrate. There's going to be some enzymatic action that breaks it down a little bit, the autolyse, so that when you go to knead it later, it'll form your dough a lot faster and make, like I said, a stronger dough. The dough looks quite different from what it was, and especially if you touch it, like before it was kind of shaggy, and now it's really wet and sticky.
Forgiving.
Looks like a dough. Yeah. So now at this point, it should mix pretty easily. So we want to let this go just until it's kind of nice and smooth and silky. You don't need to let it go till it like fully passes like a window pane test or anything, but you want it to feel nice and smooth and silky. So what I'm actually looking for here generally is that when I pull it off the hook, if it comes off like super cleanly and it kind of only sticks to itself, like that's sort of a sign that the gluten's developed enough. If it kind of tears too much, we'll go a little bit longer. I'll get maybe another minute or 2. All right, let's see how we are now. That's looking pretty good. So now we're gonna basically just dump this out into a very lightly oiled surface. A little bit of oil on our hands so it doesn't stick. And so now we're just gonna make it into a ball. The way I do it is I pick it up like that, and with my right hand, I basically, the idea is I'm trying to form like a skin, you know? And so I'm tucking all of the edges into the back here. So I kind of push with that hand and then pinch with this one and kind of work my way around it. And at this point, you know, it's not as smooth as it's gonna be when it's done, but we're just trying to get it into sort of a nice tight shape. And we're gonna do what's called the bulk fermentation here. So we're gonna basically just let that sit we'll cover it and we'll let it sit for about 3 hours until it's roughly doubled in volume. So this is one that was made earlier. So this is basically what it's gonna look like. It might, you know, sometimes it might puff a little more. This one kind of spread out a little wide. This one's still kind of got this rough cottage cheesy surface, whereas this one is really nice and sort of smooth. So that's the big difference we're looking for, and that's sort of an indication that the yeast has done its work, the gluten has developed, and we're ready to
portion some dough. Love it.
We're gonna now just divide this into 3. I like to set it up into like a sort of...
Didn't see that coming. My brain just automatically goes into like the third of the ball. This makes a ton of sense.
I prefer doing like a, like a little ruler.
I like that. A little ruler.
And then we're gonna do the exact same thing with these. You wanna do that one?
Sure.
This one? Yeah, so we're just gonna, same type of balling up as the previous one, just on a smaller scale. And so for these ones, I like to, for the final shaping, once I get the sort of little belly button there, I plop them down and do one of these tuck jobs. And then you can finish it off with a little, either a one-handed or, depending on the size of your hand, a little one-handed or two-handed cage roll, and that's it. And so nice and round. If it starts out round, it rolls out smoothly, and you get like a little belly button on the bottom. That's okay. The idea here is that we want to sort of create this tight skin around it so that when we start spreading it out, you still get this really, that skin stretches out, and so you get like a nice even spread. Whereas if you kind of just do like a, like a Play-Doh ball like this, you end up with like sort of scrappy bits that stick out, and then when you try and roll it out, like it's more likely to tear. We'll finish. A little bit of oil. Pop them in. You do want to make sure you leave enough space that they can, just like what happened there, they're going to rise a little, they're going to spread out a little. If they're too close, they're going to turn into one big ball. That's it. Now we just let that sit until those are ready to go, which will be, again, this is a pretty forgiving one, so it could be, you can do it in 3 hours, you could do it in 6 hours, and you're probably going to be fine. There's 2 fermentation steps, right? 2 resting steps. So the first one is the bulk fermentation. The main point of that is to allow flavor to develop, allow some more gluten to develop. And so that's really for sort of structural and flavor issues. The second proofing is for shaping, right? So the final proof, you shape the dough the way you want it, you get those nice round balls, and then they spread out, become stretchable. So, and mainly the reason we're letting them rest is because every time you work with dough, it tightens up, and then you have to give it some time to relax again. Like dough's very touchy.
I think if we roll it right now, it's just gonna.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah, it'll be like elastic. It'll pull right back in. So the second step is for shaping, and then giving it enough time to relax that you can stretch it out nicely.
Love it.
So next up, garlic oil. So this gets brushed on the dough before we grill it. Real simple, just garlic, olive oil, and a hand blender. Yeah, everything's real simple. Pizza's real simple, right? It's all technique.
I love it.
We're just gonna pulse it a little bit. We don't want this to be like an emulsified puree. We want like little chunky bits of garlic in there.
And this is raw now, and it will get cooked a little bit because it's going to be on the surface that'll hit both sides of the grill.
Exactly, yeah. Okay. So you do want to be a little bit careful, because garlic and oil. So garlic can have botulism spores, and then when it's submerged under oil, anaerobic environment. So it's possible that you'll develop some baddies in here if you let it sit too long. So make it the day you're going to use it, a couple days. Just don't let it sit around.
Sauce time.
Sauce time, yeah. So sauce is real simple. It's just tomatoes and salt.
Is this a grilled pizza sauce?
If I was making like the simplest New York style pizza or even like a Neapolitan pizza, just tomatoes and salt, I think simplest works fine. So the idea here is we're going to crush these tomatoes by hand. We want something really rustic. These are Bianco di Napoli, really good ones from California. You can get like a DOP San Marzano, something like that if you want. I prefer using whole peeled tomatoes and then crushing them by hand because you get more control over the texture. And generally, whole peeled tomatoes have a better texture in general because if you buy something like a diced tomato, it's got the calcium chloride and it kind of doesn't really break down very easily, whereas whole tomatoes will turn into sauce even with your finger.
Shoot out of the bowl.
Oh yeah, that's why I always try and poke a hole in each one first so that it doesn't just like squirt up in my face. If you have tomatoes that are very watery, you can drain them, just get some of the little bit of the excess liquid out. But these ones look pretty good.
Would you let this sit for a little bit, or
I would just this one I like the consistency, but if I had the other tomatoes, I would give it a few shakes and then we're good to go. In a Neapolitan or New York pizza, the sauce is going to cook on top of the pizza because you get heat from the top.
Yeah.
On a grilled pizza, it doesn't really cook very much. So the texture you have here is basically the texture.
That's what you get.
And so you don't want anything watery that's going to spread all over the pizza. So just salt, we're going to season it, and that's it. And then we're kind of good to go. My hands were clean at some point.
They aren't anymore.
All right, so now we're gonna slice the scallions, which are sort of the final garnish on the pizza. It's just part of the style, I think. I start by splitting the scallions into these sort of 2 or 3 inch segments, and then just with the very tip of the knife, I'm gonna slit them just on one side so that you can open them up like that. So you can do that with all these, and you can find a way that's comfortable for you to do that. If you don't want your scallions looking perfectly like hairs, you don't have to do any of this. So stack them up and then fold them so that they don't curl up on themselves. Instead of doing this sort of up and down, which kind of crushes cells, you want to do like as much slicing motion as possible, so using sort of the full length of the blade. All right, and so then once you get those kind of hair-like things, you dump them in the ice water. The cells are going to absorb some water, so they're going to stiffen up, and then that's going to cause the scallion to curl. If you don't want to wait, spend all that time doing that, which I generally don't at home, I would just take a scallion like this, trim off the bottom, don't bother with the slitting, and just kind of do as much, cut it as sharp a bias as you can.
Yeah. And
it's not going to look as good, but it will be a lot faster and get you like 90% of the way there.
We're grilling some pizzas.
We are.
So you've got your workstation that you like to have. Let's chat through it real quick.
Yeah, so the difference between grilled pizza and most other pizza, one of the differences is that it gets topped while it's cooking.
Yeah.
Not beforehand, because you got to cook that first side first. So you want to make sure that all of your toppings are close to your grill. All right, so that's like the part that's closer to the grill.
Got you.
We're gonna roll out our pizza here. We got a tray with parchment paper on it. If you get like really nervous about rolling dough and cooking it and trying to keep out of everything, you can actually pre-roll this dough. Just lay it, up to maybe 15 minutes to half an hour before. Lay it out on the parchment. Stack another piece of parchment on top, and you can stack them up and have them ready to go.
Maybe a little flour or oil.
Oh yeah, for sure, flour. Yeah, you want to flour it. If you if you let them sit too long and that flour hydrates, it will eventually stick. So 15, 30 minutes is probably fine. All right, so here's our dough. You can see it's like really nice and relaxed.
Yeah,
very
pretty.
soft. Doesn't bounce back when you poke it.
Keeps its dimples.
Pizza dough down. I got a fair amount of flour here, which is fine. Like this type of pizza with something like a New York and Neapolitan, where it's going to end up cooking directly on the stone. You don't want to use too much bench flour because you can get that sort of burnt flour flavor. This one we're going to kind of shake it. It gets shaken around a lot. It's going on a grill. That excess flour is just going to fall off. So it's fine to use excess bench flour here, and it makes it a lot easier to roll it out. So I put in a little pile of flour. I like to use a tapered French rolling pin because I find it just gives you a little more control over the final shape. All right. So I'm going to get it going a little bit in both directions. And then once we're sort of about to there, then I'll just continue going without, just moving the rolling pin instead of the dough. I mean, so when the dough's nice and relaxed, it'll stretch out. And if you see it like really pulling back in, it's like probably a sign that you didn't let it rest long enough. But we're going to just shake off a little bit of the excess flour here. So that's about it. It's going to, so I'm making it a little bit smaller than it will be when it actually, it'll stretch out a little bit as it gets on the grill. So garlic oil, kind of like, scoop up a little garlic chunks. Salt. All right, so now we're going to pick this up and we're going to drape it right over the grates. At the beginning, the dough's going to be pretty slack, right? And a little bit hard to pick up and move around. So what you can do with a Weber kettle, let's say your coals are too hot and you're afraid it's going to start burning. You can rotate this around so that your dough ends up on the cooler side of the grill. So we're going to let it basically just sit here a couple moments. We're going to see that those bubbles popping up. That's an indication that the dough's setting up. And then once it's kind of firm on that bottom side, it becomes a lot easier to work with.
I love that. You don't hear that sound with a pizza very often.
Oh, and at this point, we can actually brush that other side with garlic also. You don't want to do this right when it goes on the grill because otherwise you end up like pushing it through the grill grates. You need to let it develop a little structure first.
Right.
Also salt and pepper. The one thing you're gonna pretty much always notice is that the center cooks a lot faster than the edges. And so you can see like once it starts to cook, I like to give each sort of edge a little bit of extra time over the hottest part of the grill. I think we're pretty much
I feel like that's the opposite of most pizzas. The center's cooking faster.
Yeah, it's the opposite. Yeah. But there we go. That's
beautiful.
That one's pretty nicely even brown. Yeah, our coals are on the cooler side now. So, the hotter your coals are, the sort of the more uneven browning you get. So when they're cooler, you get a nice sort of golden brown with some charred spots. When they're really hot, you get more of that sort of leopard spotting. And now your temptation might be to just let it sit there and like go have a beer, go chat with your friends, whatever. You don't want to let it sit too long because, what happens with pizza and with any dough is that if it's hot but not hot enough that it's like, cooking, it's going to eventually, moisture is going to come out of it. And instead of having that sort of contrast between the crackly outside and the soft interior, you end up with something that's crunchy all the way through like a cracker. So you definitely don't want to let it sit too long. I'm doing a combination of fontina and mozzarella here, although any sort of good melting cheese will work. I would avoid something like fresh mozzarella because it's super watery. You'll get a puddle on your pizza, and then a little bit of pecorino. And cheese we're putting on first so that it has an opportunity to melt. As far as our toppings go, this one is just a simple one. We're gonna take those tomatoes and kind of dollop them on here.
You're not like...
No, yeah, it's gonna be quite different from like a New York or Neapolitan.
This is brand new to me. I see where you're going with this.
Just like a good, like a Neapolitan pizza, I feel like this is one of those things that really just like celebrates simple ingredients and like good technique and really not much else. By the time you get to that second side, it's pretty easy to just kind of move around the grill and just kind of glide over it. What I actually find interesting is that first side, you always get more even browning on that first side because once those bubbles start popping up, and the dough thins out around those bubbles, that's why like on that second side, you get a lot more of the sort of darker spots because the dough had bubbled up and it's a little bit thinner there. But that looks about done to me. So I'm gonna just finish it off.
Beautiful.
With a little bit of basil chiffonade. And when I do this basil, I like to throw it over the pizza, but also make sure to get some like into the coals because it smells really good.
Oh my God.
It's like the, it
does smell so good.
It's a sizzling fajita platter of pizza. All right. probably a safer way to do that.
Oh, that's beautiful.
All right, and we're gonna finish it off with there's a scallion.
Mmm.
All right.
Wait, are we cutting it? I want to hear that crunch.
I like to party cut these guys. A bunch of small pieces, what I like. Oh, look at this. Yeah, kind of cantilevers out, which is nice.
Mmm. Good engineering.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Cheers.
Cheers, buddy. Thank you. Whoa!
Same day.
The contrast to texture in the dough is awesome.
Yeah,
Crispy,
like really
crunchy,
crispy
soft,
bit.
moist.
Yeah, and it's hard to. That's one of those things that's hard to do with indoor ovens. Like anything that's not this extreme high heat, it's hard to get that real nice contrast. As far as like pizza making at home goes, it's one of the best ways to do it because it's completely entry level. You don't need any kind of special equipment other than a grill. I mean, every step in it is really relatively simple once you understand the process, and you can even do it on the same day. You can do it with store-bought dough. It's just like a really easy way to make new friends or keep old ones. You know.
There you have it. Grilled pizza with Kenji López-Alt. Dude, thank you so much.
Thank you.
We're gonna have the dough recipe on ChefSteps, the full techniques, all that sort of stuff, all the extra tips and tricks. Kenji López-Alt, thank you so much, brother. This
Thank you.
is amazing.
That's awesome.
My first grilled pizza, and it's amazing.
If you post a picture of a pizza and you don't get a comment saying that your pizza was burnt, then it was underdone.
Subscribe to our channel and visit chefsteps.com for more tips, recipes, guides, and tools to help you level up in the kitchen.